Hello and welcome to India Business Hour. I'm Shireen Bhan. The headlines that we're tracking for you this evening.
We have to be very careful about opening the gate, as the horse may simply bolt again.
RBI Governor remains cautious on inflation as the Monetary Policy Committee leaves key rates unchanged for the 10th time in a row, but changes its policy stance to neutral, raising hopes of a possible rate cut in December.
It is observed that some NBFCs are aggressively pursuing growth without building up sustainable business practices and risk management frameworks.
RBI Governor warns non-banking finance companies once again, says few NBFCs are aggressively chasing growth without building sustainable business practices, warns of action if companies fail to self-correct. The sensex and the Nifty end the day flat after a last-hour sell-off. The Nifty falls below 25,000. Mid-caps outperform. The rupee remains on a tight leash against the dollar. Hyundai India unveils its 28,000 crore rupee initial public offer, which will open for subscription on the 15th of October. The issue values the company at 1.5 lakh crore rupees, which is largely in line with its peers. If successful, this will be India's largest IPO yet.
Only reason we would want an IPO is because we are at the forefront of this, right?
I would say 50-50, more leaning towards no IPO today.
I would lean heavily towards no IPO.
Trio at Zerodha divided on a potential IPO after reporting a record profit of 4,700 crore rupees in FY24. Admit the best could be behind the broking business after seminal regulatory changes. That's an exclusive. Israel expands ground operations in Lebanon, claims to have struck 230 Hezbollah and Hamas targets. Netanyahu warns that Lebanese people could face destruction and suffering like the Palestinians in Gaza if they don't free the country from Hezbollah. United Nations Secretary General warns that Gaza is in a death spiral. Iran ready to sell oil to India, says the country's ambassador. Also adds that Iran understands India's reluctance because of the threat of sanctions from the US. The Road Transport Ministry is likely to seek an explanation from Ola Electric on customer complaints. This after the Central Consumer Protection Authority already issued a show-cause notice to the company. India's Drug Controller General says not all the 50 drugs recently flagged for quality are fake, says only 5 of them were found to be spurious, for which prosecution will be initiated. Election Commission writes to the Congress President Kharge over several of his party colleagues questioning the Haryana Assembly poll results, calls the statements a step towards undemocratic rejection of the will of the people. A delegation of Congress leaders met EC officials to submit their complaints. Google faces an attempt by the US government to break it up. Court filings show that the Department of Justice seeks structural remedies to end the monopoly over the internet search market. Well, the top story this evening, the Reserve Bank of India has kept its key policy rates unchanged at 6.5% for the 10th time in a row. However, this time the decision was not unanimous, as new MPC member Nagesh Kumar voted in favour of a rate cut. All MPC members, however, did decide to change the stance from withdrawal of accommodation to neutral. Now, that raises hopes of a possible rate cut as early as December. Now, the GDP forecast for FY25 has been retained at 7.2%. RBI Governor Shaktikanta Das said he expects India's growth story to remain intact, in fact, robust. However, the growth forecast for the second quarter has been lowered to 7%. Let's talk about inflation. The MPC has retained its FY25 forecast for inflation at 4.5%. Governor Das remains cautious and highlighted the rise in global food and metal prices along with the volatility in crude prices as potential upside risks. The governor also issued a stern warning to non-bank finance companies. He said few NBFCs are aggressively chasing growth without building sustainable business practices, and this could be counterproductive. He also warned of action if companies failed to self-correct. Take a look.
While the overall NBFC sector remains healthy, I have a few messages to certain outliers. First, it is observed that some NBFCs are aggressively pursuing growth without building up sustainable business practices and risk management frameworks, which should be commensurate with the scale and complexity of their portfolio. An imprudent growth at any cost approach would be counterproductive for their own health. It is important that NBFCs, including MFIs and housing finance companies, follow sustainable business goals, a compliance-first culture, a strong risk management framework, a strict adherence to fair practices code, and a sincere approach to customer grievances. The Reserve Bank is closely monitoring these areas and will not hesitate to take appropriate action if necessary. Self-correction by NBFCs would, however, be the desired option.
Well, that is the RBI Governor. Lata is here with more on the monetary policy as well as that warning to NBFCs. Lata, the policy largely in line with what the markets were anticipating, a change in stance now leading to hopes of a rate cut as early as December. But more importantly, that reiteration of the cautionary message that the Governor has sent out to NBFCs.
Well, those are the three key takeaways for me. First is it's such a masterly act in going neutral but not sounding too dovish. It's a little difficult, you know, once you change the stance, the markets can run away with their exuberance. But the quotes caveated that dovishness so beautifully. Look at the quotes that he said. Even as there is greater confidence in navigating the last mile of disinflation, significant risks, I repeat, significant risks to inflation persist. And then another quote, we need to closely monitor the evolving conditions for further confirmation of disinflationary impulses, saying that disinflation is not good enough. So that's, I think, excellent, not allowing the markets to be exuberant. And we saw that play out in the stock market, not too much exuberance. Again, next cut is that in December. It's usually logical. You change the stance this quarter, next policy, you will cut rates. He has hedged himself again very well over there. The MPC is unambiguously focused on getting inflation, aligning inflation to target. The other words are the same as the previous stance. What he has added is the word unambiguously, and it was repeated like 3 times. So in all 4 times, we got to hear the word unambiguously, something absent in previous policies, driving home the point that we may not cut as early as December. In fact, to buttress that point, Deputy Governor Patra in the Q&A said that we want to cross the current hump of inflation before we consider the next step. Now, what is this current hump? Actually, the September inflation number will come out next week, October 13th, and October 14th, and that's expected to be 5.2%. You know, the NPC's target is 4%. And the October inflation number, which will come out next month, is expected to be again 5%. Now, those are the 2 numbers that will be available to the MPC when they go to the policy on December 6th. With that 5% readings behind them, they have a very good chance to say, let's wait to see it's getting back to 4. So my sense is that December is more likely not than, expect a rate cut. No rate cut would be the call going by these statements. And finally, reading the Riot Act to NBFCs, MFIs, HFCs. Now, the important point is that the words that they used, RBI will not hesitate to take appropriate action, though we think self-correction is the best. Now, that's a big threat. So another round of raising risk weights, if the number of loans per person doesn't go down, or the number of risky loans or sharp practices don't go down, that warning has come out very clearly. So those who own NBFC stocks also did not celebrate much today. There is something to celebrate because the cost of money goes down for NBFCs. They borrow from the market. But people didn't celebrate much because this hidden threat came in. And finally, a point which really I took away is he's very confident on growth. That 7.2% was argued with such vehemence that now I'm inclined to be a little more optimistic.
Well, that balancing act, change in stance, but yet caution being raised around inflation. Lata, many thanks for joining us. Let's talk about the markets. They did perk up soon after the RBI status quo policy, but then we saw a sell-off in the last hour which wiped out the gains. The sensex and the Nifty ended with marginal losses. The Nifty, in fact, dropping just about 31 points. The sensex closing 160-odd points lower. The mid-cap index, though, was still higher by about 1%, and that's where it closed for the day. The global cues also painted a mixed picture. The stimulus rally in China running out of steam, with the Shanghai Composite Index losing over 6% today. Nikkei closing higher by about 1%. And that's the story as far as the global markets were concerned. But back to the proposed big IPO. Hyundai India's 28,000 crore rupee initial public offer will open for subscription on the 15th of October. Now, if successful, this will be the largest IPO yet, ahead of LIC and Paytm. The issue will close on the 17th of October. The company set its price band between 1,865 and 1,960 rupees per equity share. The IPO will be entirely an offer for sale, where Hyundai India's parent company will offload 17.5% of its total equity. Hyundai India is valuing the business at 1.5 lakh crore rupees, which is largely in line with its peers. Speaking to CNBC TV 18, the company's top brass said they plan to invest nearly 32,000 crore rupees in India over the next 10 years.
India is one of the most exciting auto market in the world, and HMI has been performing well for more than 26 years from the 1998, and is second largest passenger vehicle OEM in India. We believe it is the right time to take a further step to Indianize our operation in India.
What will be the total investment between phase 1 and phase 2 till 2028 that you've planned?
We are investing the 6,000 crore in the Pune plant. And also we are investing more than 320 billion rupees for the next 10 years.
June, July, August period always has been a little bit of a sluggish period. But now that we have entered the festive season with the Navratras and the Diwali, things are looking very up. So we are very, very confident about the growth of the Indian auto industry. Look, when you compare with September, the inquiries, the bookings, the retails are very, very good. So I think it's very, very lot of optimism around it. Also, this is after many years that in October itself, both the Navratra, Dashera and the Dhanteras is coming. So I think this is going to be a bumper month.
So 4 EV launches, including the Creta EV, which comes in Q4 of FY25. Are any of these born EVs, native EVs, and what's the timeline for these launches?
Yeah, of course. We are looking at dedicated EVs, base-up EVs, definitely. And as of now, we can just say that, yes, next few years, you will see these 4 launches.
Well, that's the proposed Hyundai IPO. Shares of SpiceJet up in trade after the amicable settlement of a $132 million dispute with aircraft leasing firm Babcock & Brown Aircraft Management. The airline said the dispute has been resolved for $22.5 million. That's 1/6 of the original amount. Remember, Babcock & Brown represent 3 of the budget carriers' lessors. SpiceJet had recently raised 3,000 crore rupees through a QIP. From aviation to auto, the Road Transport Ministry may seek an explanation from Ola Electric about customer complaints related to its service. We learn from sources the ministry is aware of customer grievances against the EV player, and this comes just a day after the Central Consumer Protection Authority issued a show-cause notice to Ola Electric over alleged violation of consumer rights. Now, the government has approved the continuation of the supply of free fortified rice under various government schemes till 2028. The cabinet, chaired by Prime Minister Modi, allocated 17,000 crore rupees as funding for this. The initiative aims to enhance the nutritional value of rice distributed through the public distribution system and other welfare programs. Well, the big newsmakers this evening, the Triodos are divided on a potential IPO after reporting a record profit of 4,700 crore rupees in FY24. In an exclusive conversation with me, CEO Nitin Kamath said the firm will opt for an IPO if the regulator makes it mandatory. The CFO, Nikhil Kamath, is 50-50 on a potential listing. The Chief Technology Officer, Kailash Nath, is opposed to going public. The Triodos also said the best could be behind the broking industry after seminal regulatory changes have come in.
Let me put that question to all 3 of you, because that is the number one question that everybody's asking. Right. Why don't you IPO in a market where everybody's IPOing at this point in time? Is it about the fact that you don't have clear line of sight, as far as revenue predictability is concerned, especially in the current regulatory environment? 2, is it about the fact that, look, you don't have any exits to offer because you didn't want to carry that baggage with you? And 3, your freedom, the ability to want to do the things that you want to do without having to answer questions, which is it? And is it a no for now, or is it off the table, for the long term?
I mean, the only reason we would want to IPO is because we are at the forefront of this, right? As in, we are a stockbroker, and we ask every company to create wealth.
Exactly.
So that's the only reason. I mean, I don't think, at least for now, there's any other reason to go IPO, right? As in, if ever we decide in the next, I don't know, by the time, I mean, the plan as of now is we build a bunch of businesses, build some diversification, and then maybe once there is predictability, then we can decide.
If you had to vote, would you vote for an IPO in the near future or not?
I would be conflicted because the pros and cons, I think, are very close to being equal.
So it's what, 50-50 for you?
I would say 50-50, more leaning towards no IPO today.
More leaning towards no IPO, Kailash?
I would lean heavily towards no IPO, but then again, I'm not really a finance person.
Yeah.
To me, it's a bunch of common sense questions. Why does an organization IPO? If you want to raise capital, if you have a need for capital. Thankfully, we don't have a need for capital. And freedom and liberty is what really allows us to excel in what we do. And that's a big factor for me personally, the innovation that we do, the decisions that we take. So for me, unless, like Nikhil is saying, unless there's the pros and cons outweigh each other significantly, the flip, I'd heavily lean towards not.
Heavily lean towards not. Are you 50-50 or heavily leaning against not?
I mean, the only other reason, apart from the fact that we are stockbrokers, to list is if regulations ask us to list.
You spoke about this very openly, saying that you believe that perhaps the best is behind the broking business on account of the many changes that have come in on the regulatory side, whether it's F&O and so on and so forth. And the prospects of moving to T+0 and ASBA in the secondary market, that could be an even further debilitating factor as far as your business is concerned. So how do you operate if there is fear, obviously that constrains your choices at this point in time, or do you feel that you now have to think out of the box to try and sort of innovate your way out of this? And is it even possible?
Yeah, I mean, the thing what the regulator, especially SEBI, wants the brokers to do is to earn money only from brokerage and not from anything else. And since the entire industry is used to earning in a certain way, which is like a sum of all the parts, so it's going to be a big challenge especially for, I don't say incumbents, but then someone who has benefited the entire broking industry. It would be a challenge. Now, essentially, we have to figure some way to kind of get over it, as in we potentially have to up the brokerage.
And you can catch that entire conversation with the Zerodha trio on Young Turks Reloaded. That's coming up on CNBC TV 18.
The only reason we would want to IPO is because we are at the forefront of this, right? As in, we are a stockbroker.
I would say 50-50, more leaning towards no IPO today.
More leaning towards no IPO, Kailash?
I would lean heavily towards no IPO.
We really want to be a bank, but however we have tried over the last many years, we have not been allowed to.
Well, the big international story, tensions in West Asia continue to boil over. Israel has stepped up its offensive in northern Gaza. The UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees has said that Israeli forces have trapped 4 lakh people in northern Gaza. Israel has also expanded its ground operations in Lebanon and has claimed to have struck 230 Hezbollah and Hamas targets. Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu addressed Lebanese citizens, urging them to remove Hezbollah from the country so they can avoid destruction and suffering like Gaza. He also branded the country a place of war. Meanwhile, an airstrike was carried out in Syria's Damascus by Israel. The attack hit a residential building, killing 7 people. Oil prices trading steady after a sell-off in the previous session. The market seems to have factored in a potential strike by Israel against Iran's oil infrastructure. Prices had plunged over 4% in the previous session after Hezbollah appeared to back off from a truce in Gaza as a precondition for a ceasefire in Lebanon. Analysts also expect Hurricane Milton, which makes landfall in Florida today, to disrupt U.S. supplies. Now, Iran says it's open to resuming crude exports to India. That's as per the Iranian ambassador to India, Iraj Ilahi. Speaking to CNBC TV 18, the ambassador also said that Iran understands India's reluctance because of the threat of sanctions from the U.S. Take a look.
We have expressed our readiness to restart delivering oil to India. But at the same time, we understand the conservation of Indian side because of the sanction. But we hope that there will be some progress in this regard.
That's the Iranian ambassador to India. Now, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman called the European Union's carbon tax arbitrary and unilateral. This comes weeks after India decided to retaliate against steel tariffs imposed by the EU. Speaking at the Financial Times Energy Transition Summit, the Finance Minister also expressed hopes that talks over a free trade deal between India and the EU will not be stalled due to these concerns. Take a look.
The cross-border adjustment mechanism which is coming, which is going to hurt our industry. I'm not sure whether it is WTO compliant. It is a trade barrier. And you're putting in a tariff for what you define as dirty steel, whilst you yourself would produce the dirty steel and make sure that the money which you earn out of this is funding your conversion from dirty to green steel. And there will be that fine one morning when you would say, we are producing green steel, we don't want dirty steel to come to India, and we'll be funding that. And suddenly we realize that we won't have the money to convert ours speedily. So there are such not so helpful ways in which developed countries follow certain policies, which are unilateral and, I'm sorry to say, arbitrary. It won't be escalated to the level of hurting the talks. The FTA is an important component of wanting better trade relations. But our concerns will definitely be voiced.
India's Drug Controller General has said that not all 50 drugs recently flagged for quality are fake. Speaking to CNBC TV 18, he added that only 5 of them were found to be spurious, for which prosecution will be initiated. Timsy joins us now with the details. Timsy.
Rajiv Singh Raghuvanshi, drug controller, has clarified that the recent list of 50-plus drugs is a routine process and the government undertakes this exercise to ensure people have access to good quality drugs. Talking to me after CII summit, replying to my queries, he said that not all drugs under this list were fake and only 5 of them were spurious. He also added that coming out with such a list is a routine process, as every month samples are tested and action is taken as per the provisions under the Drugs and Cosmetics Act, depending on how serious the non-compliance is. He also explained that once the list is out, all drugs under the list are put for a recall, as the companies are informed to do so. In serious cases of fake drugs, the investigation orders are issued, post which the action starts from identifying the person who was selling these drugs, from where the samples were picked, and the mapping of the entire supply chain is done, so that the entire chain of manufacturing, those who were selling these fake drugs, is brought to the legal conclusion, including prosecution. And in this case of 5 drugs, drug controllers said that the work is in progress to bring them to the book. On the issue of how common man can assess between a genuine and a fake drug, drug controller said that in the first phase, the mandate for the manufacturers of top 300 brands was to have a genuine QR code, which has been done already. And in the next phase, the drug controller is looking at expanding this list to more number of products. He also said that recently, drug controller has notified all vaccines should have a QR code similar to the drugs. On regulating the social media space for influencers, he said that the states take the action as per the Drugs and Magic Remedies Act, and wherever it comes to the notice of the regulator that influencers are leading to misleading claims and advertising wrong drugs, then the action is taken appropriately.
Timsy, many thanks for joining us. The Election Commission has written to Congress President Mallikarjun Kharge over several of his party colleagues questioning the credibility of the Haryana Assembly election results. The EC said the statements made by Congress leaders were far from a legitimate part of free speech. The BJP secured a historic third term in Haryana and halted a Congress comeback, contrary to what most exit polls had predicted. The Congress alleges that polling booths where electronic voting machines had 99% battery charge saw BJP win, while Congress emerged victorious where EVMs had 60 to 70% charge. A delegation of Congress leaders met with EC officials earlier, highlighting their complaints.
20 शिकायतें जो हमारे पास आई हैं, उनमें से 7 लिखित शिकायतें जो अभी आई हैं 7 कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंसीज से, जिसमें बैटरीज का खास तौर पे जो 99% बैटरीज दिखा रही थी काउंटिंग के दिन, और बाकी मशीनें जो सामान्य थी वो 60-70% दिखा रही थी। उससे हमने चुनाव आयोग को अवगत कराया और चुनाव आयोग ने हमें ये आश्वासन दिया है, क्योंकि माकन जी ने और सिंघवी साहब ने एक मांग रखी कि वो तमाम मशीनें जिनके बारे में आज जिक्र किया है, शिकायत की है, उन मशीनों को सील कर दिया जाए, सिक्योर कर दिया जाए जब तक इसकी जांच पूरी नहीं हो जाती।
2 बार कार्यकाल पूरा करने के बाद लगातार तीसरी बार चुनकर आना ऐतिहासिक है। कांग्रेस का पूरा इकोसिस्टम, अर्बन नक्सल का पूरा गिरोह जनता को गुमराह करने में जुटा था, लेकिन कांग्रेस की सारी साजिशें ध्वस्त हो गई।
And staying with politics, the Delhi Chief Minister's office has claimed that the Chief Minister Atishi's belongings have been forcibly removed from the official CM residence in civil lines at the behest of the BJP. The CM's office also alleged the Lieutenant Governor wants to allot the house to a BJP leader. This comes 2 days after Atishi moved into the residence. BJP MLA Vijender Gupta has accused Atishi of illegally occupying the bungalow and demanded that it be sealed. In international news, Watergate reporter Bob Woodward has claimed that former US President Donald Trump secretly sent COVID-19 testing kits to Russian President Vladimir Putin when they were in short supply in the US. The claim made in Woodward's book, which is titled War, has been dismissed by the Trump campaign. The book also claims that Trump secretly stayed in touch with Putin since leaving office. The US Department of Justice has called for the possible breakup of Google's business in a bid to tackle antitrust practices. The DOJ has sought structural remedies to end the monopoly over the internet search market. They've also proposed to include blocking the tech giant from paying to have its search engine pre-installed on smartphones and other devices. 2 scientists at Google DeepMind and an American biochemist will share the 2024 Nobel Prize in Chemistry. Google DeepMind scientists Demis Hassabis and John Jumper were honored for the development of an AI system that predicts the 3D structure of proteins. Biochemist David Baker was also awarded the Nobel for his work on computational protein design. And with that, it is time for us to wrap up this edition of India Business Hour. Thanks very much for watching. The news will continue right here on CNBC TV 18. Stay tuned.